Welcome to the podcast of North American Literature, hosted by the Research Group Studies in American Literature and Culture of the University of Granada. I'm Julian Elvira, and we are with Rita Perez. Thank you for being today, Rita.
Hello, Julian. Thank you for inviting me today.
We will be talking about your recent work based on a comparison between the novels and narrative of The Captivity by Mary Rowlandson and The Roundhouse by Louis Erdrich. Okay, Rita, I wanted to ask, generally speaking, what is your work about?
Well, I established a comparison between Rowlandson's and Erdrich's novels to prove the influence of one on the other. So I had to ask ChatGPT several questions about them and identify and correct its mistakes. I focus mainly on the themes of violence, projection of the natives, and the role of women. Also in the use of diegetic levels and some literary devices. Both novels talk about a woman's experience being captive or abused by men, so I wanted to reflect how is this portrayed in both of them.
You have used ChatGPT to ask a series of questions about the work and to check its accuracy percentage. Were you pleasantly or unpleasantly surprised? Did you expect it to make more or fewer mistakes?
I was not surprised at all because I was sure the robot will make mistakes, as it only has access to certain knowledge on the internet. And some mistakes were very clear, such as not knowing the name of one of the main characters of Erdrich's novel, the mother who is abused, but others were a bit difficult to identify. For instance, the main mistake was that it is incapable of argumenting and supporting ideas. It just gives very general answers and they are very complex to work with and develop.
The moral of the story is not to trust artificial intelligence?
Yeah, that is right. We should not believe everything that we see on the internet.
What kind of question did you ask ChatGPT in order to identify the mistake you note in your project?
Firstly, I asked some general questions and the answers were mostly right and accurate, but very general. However, when I started asking particular questions about some aspects of the novels, the robot was incapable of answering them or it answered them wrong. That is because it only has access to some specific and limited data about the novels, and seeking for further information is something ChatGPT cannot reach out to.
Do you think the work could have been easier without using ChatGPT?
Absolutely, because then the essay would have been based on reliable knowledge of articles and the books themselves. It is clearly easier to write an essay with truthful information. However, using ChatGPT was sometimes useful because it provided some information I could use for my work. Also, it makes you realize that the internet doesn't always tell the truth, and we tend to take for granted the most part of things we see online. I'd say the difficult part was not identifying the errors the robot made because they were pretty clear, but it was proving them wrong and providing the specific textual evidence for that. Some errors were so difficult to prove that they could not be included in the work because I could not find any backup argument. Despite of this, I found the work very enriching. It was truly a challenge I think I was able to face, although I could have done better in some aspects.
What are the most prominent narrative aspects of the work and narrative of The Captivity, Suffering and Removes by Mary Rowlandson, and have influenced the work The Roundhouse by Louis Erdrich?
Mostly the first-person narrator, which provides immediacy and closeness to the reader, and it feels that the reader is immersed into the story, seeing and experiencing the same as the characters. Then I'd say the theme, as both stories express the personal experience of women being captive and suffering both psychological and physical abuse. And lastly, I'd say the projection of the natives and the changing of the world, because the colonists here are struggling with their identity, and this is pictured in both works, but from a different point of view. In Rowlandson, it is provided a Eurocentric point of view, and Erdrich provides an American one. For one of them, the others are the savages and those who cause problems in society.
In general, what are the most noticeable differences you have found between the two works?
As I said before, basically the perspective the novels are told. One is Eurocentric and the other one is American. Mary Rowlandson is a white woman, and the characters on the roundhouse are all Native Americans who have to deal with all the discrimination and difficulties of being who they are. And another one could be the narrator. On one hand, Rowlandson is her own narrator in her story. She tells the reader her experience, her personal experience, as her novel is kind of a diary she wrote to cope with all the pain she suffered while she was captive. And on the other hand, the narrator is not the character who suffers the trauma in the roundhouse, but her son Joe. It is a novel told from a kid's perspective of the changing world. Not only that, but also it conveys other characters' perspectives to enrich the story and give it more detail and tension.
How are the themes of violence and the role of women reflected in each work?
They are both the main theme in both novels, especially there is violence against women. The characters had been abused and raped by the natives, in one case the white man and in the other the American. The role of women in both novels is treated as the inferior gender, as they are held captive and abused by men. In spite of this, there is a vindication of their role, differently in both novels. For example, in Rowlandson's novel, it is vindicated by herself writing and publishing that novel, which was not usual at the time.
How would you classify the novels?
Well, on one hand, Rowlandson's novel is a diary, a meditation in which she tells exactly what she wants. That is, she decides what to tell and what to hide. For example, her raping is not directly mentioned, but she implies it. She chooses what she wants the reader to know. However, it can be also a social satire of the natives, as she depicts them as savages, British, murderous wretches, and showing how women are treated and lowered by society. Moreover, it conveys a Christian message due to the fact that she supports her argument on biblical passages and uses Christian lexic. She makes references to God several times. Basically, she's a Puritan, and being captive is for her a sign of election by God. On the other hand, Erdrich's novel is difficult to classify. It uses a lot of tension and suspense, but at the same time it deals with real and profound themes. It may be another social satire, I think, and the tweet also talks about the situation in the colonies, the role of women. Nevertheless, it also tricks politics, so I honestly don't know how I could classify it. It is a very complete and complex novel.
In what historical and social context did Mary Rowlandson write her novel? Did it influence her writing?
A narrative of the captivity, sufferings, and removes of Mary Rowlandson recounts the invasion by Indians during King Philip's War. And during the invasion on February 20th in 1676, she was taken captive. Her novel blends the difficulties society at that time was facing and also the religious beliefs of Puritanism. Um, it provides a significant example for the cultural and political influence of captivity narratives and its significance in colonial America. It also fulfilled an important political function from the point of view of the colonial power, and it obviously influences her narrative, as the story is based on that society, colonialism, the life in the colonies, the changing world. And the story is basically her experience being captive by the American natives, the others.
I know it's a difficult question, but honestly, which novel was your favorite?
I think I prefer the Roundhouse because it depicts a more profound description of the characters, and it talks about very serious themes such as colonialism, politics, the life of the colonies, the role of women in society, nationalism, violence. Basically, it gives a modernized view of Rowlandson's novel, and also it may be seen as a social satire or kind of a criticism to society, especially about sexism and racism due to the difficult situation of Native Americans in the society and women who are still in this century treated as inferiors. Moreover, it can also be depicted obviously as a feminist novel because it portrays the role of women in society and tries to defend it.
So, I understand you would recommend this novel, right?
Yeah, totally. I think it is a very interesting novel, which, as I said, deals with problems society has to face. And it made me realize other people's life situations because we tend to focus only on what we have without noticing others.
If you could meet Louise Erdrich now, what would you ask her about her work?
That is a tricky question. I think I would ask her what was her inspiration to write the novel, because Rowlandson is narrating her personal experience, but Erdrich is not. Also, the novel is very well written, combining several points of view, treating various themes, merging the primary plot with secondary ones. I think it requires time and talent to construct that novel.
That's a curious question. I know it's impossible, but if you could meet Mary Rowlandson, what would you ask her?
That is also a tricky question too. I believe I would ask her how did she deal with all that damage, because being captive for that long and being raped and abused is obviously not easy to cope with. Not even writing that diary could have helped her deal with all that suffering. Also, another doubt I have is how could she believe her suffering was an election from God? I truly respect Puritanism, but it is illogical to believe that God makes someone suffer that much in order to let them know they are an addict. I don't know.
Well, to conclude, what is your general opinion about your work? What is difficult? Did you come to any conclusions?
Well, to be honest, it was not easy. I had to dedicate several days to complete it, because the work was not only based on asking the robot some questions and noticing it mistakes, but I had to prove why the answers were wrong based on textual evidence from the novels themselves and some external articles. Finding useful articles was not easy either. Also, I had to take many screenshots of the evidence, underline the words I had to choose, paste them, make links in all the references, quote all the references, etc. And yeah, it required a lot of investigation, reading, and hard work.
I see it's not easy. Honestly, I think I would not be able to do it myself. Okay, that was great. I think you did a great job. I was so interesting. Thank you for sharing your work with us.
Thanks to you, it was such a pleasure.
And that's all for today. See you on the next program. Bye.
you.